Well, good evening and welcome to the COVID-19 pandemic updates. I'm Kayode Okikulu. First, the highlights. Zamfara state government targets 50% vaccine coverage of residents 18 years and above by the end of the year. The governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, challenges global community to come through with 40% vaccine coverage in sub-Saharan Africa. And restaurants in Athens, Greece, shut their doors for 24 hours to demand compensations lost to restrictions. Well, great to have you join us on the program as we continue to bring you all the vital information you need to know about COVID-19. The power to stay safe is in your hands, so take responsibility. But then, what does that mean, really? Take responsibility, a phrase which you may have heard countless times. Well, it simply means taking actions that will protect you and those around you from getting infected with the virus. So it's in your hands essentially means hand washing. Wash or sanitize your hands frequently. Cough or sneeze into your elbow. Wear a face mask. Keep your distance from people. And stay indoors when feeling unwell.
"30 additional persons in Nigeria have been recorded as positive for COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, the latest figures were reported from 8 states and indicate a rise from the figures reported 24 hours earlier. Abia State had the highest number of infections with 9 cases. Bauchi State recorded 7 cases. Kaduna and Kano State had 4 cases each. Cross River and River State both reported 2 cases, while Bayelsa and Jigawa had 1 case each. Today's report includes a previous case from Bauchi State. No new cases were reported from Edo and Sokoto states. The total case load in Nigeria has risen to 213,177. 38 more people were discharged, bringing the total number of recoveries to 205,770. There were no additional deaths from COVID-19 complications reported in the last 24 hours, keeping the total number of deaths at 2,968. The number of cases on admission has dropped to just over 4,400, while over 3.4 million samples have been tested. The latest update from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency shows that more than 5.8 million Nigerians have received a first shot of the COVID-19 vaccine, while over 3.2 million persons have been fully vaccinated. Globally, more than 7.5 billion vaccines have been administered. In Africa, there are more than 8.5 million confirmed cases and over 220,000 deaths have been recorded across countries on the continent. More than 253 million people all over the world have contracted COVID-19, while deaths are over 5.1 million.
Zamfara State has flagged off a mass vaccination campaign to enable the state meet up with 50% target of eligible population in the state before December the 31st. Well, the flag off, which also marks the start of the 3rd phase of a vaccination in the state, targets public places and religious centers. The Executive Secretary of Zamfara State Primary Healthcare Board, Dr. Ismail Tukur, during his presentation disclosed that this is also a federal government mandate.
It's an urgent meeting of stakeholders in Zamfara State to ramp up vaccination in order to cover 50% of those 18 years old and above by the end of the year. According to the Executive Secretary of the Primary Healthcare Board in the state, the national vaccination average of 132 people per day is unacceptable, as it will take 6 to 7 years to achieve the desired coverage.
By 31st December 2021, 50% of all the eligible population must be vaccinated. And by so doing, we need to vaccinate on the average 63,000 people per day in the whole country. For Zamfara, we need to immunize at least 107 people per day for the next 8 weeks to be able to achieve 50% coverage.
The State Commissioner for Health aims to take the vaccination campaign to public places like worship centers, markets, motor parks, secondary and tertiary institutions of learning, and security formations.
Let me once again state that any person who is 18 years and above is eligible to receive Moderna, AstraZeneca, or any other brand of COVID-19 vaccines available. However, it is pertinent to state that mixing one brand of vaccine with other brand in the first and second dose is not allowed.
The chairman of the COVID-19 task force, who is also the Speaker of the State House of Assembly, urged stakeholders, especially those that have received the vaccine, to sensitize people of the state to get vaccinated to avoid the spread of the virus.
For us to stop this pandemic, we need a critical herd immunity that can only be achieved when we reach at least 70% herd immunity.
Dr. Ismail Tukur revealed that as of this moment in Zamfara State, 88,905 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, while 56,797 had been vaccinated with both first and second doses, representing 2.7% of a total of 2,957,410 targeted eligible population.
Meanwhile, the governor of Lagos State is making a case for sub-Saharan Africa as nations of the world race to meet the 40% vaccination coverage before the end of the year. The Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu says the world can only succeed in that goal if Lagos, and by extension Nigeria and the sub-Saharan region, is able to vaccinate 40% of its population through equitable distribution of vaccines. He was speaking at the National Council on Finance and Economic Development NACOFED conference holding in Lagos.
Just a week and a half ago, I was at a side meeting of the G20 summit in Rome. And what came out of that summit was a commitment, was a global commitment at ensuring that a 30 to a 40% global coverage on vaccines must be achieved before the end of December. I, representing the largest subnational in the country, and by extension the largest nation in sub-Saharan Africa, did put it to them that indeed, if you want to succeed in your 40% for global coverage on vaccine, if you have not succeeded in Nigeria, you have not succeeded anywhere. And if indeed you have not succeeded in Lagos, then that means you have not started. It was a hard and difficult conversation, and the message was not lost on them. And indeed, if they are serious about ensuring that what is equitable, what is just, what is right, they need to come to sub-Saharan Africa, and they need to do the needful to ensure that that vaccine has a proper coverage, and they will be able to achieve the 40% that they've talked about.
Well, the Presidential Steering Committee had a briefing yesterday, and a number of important issues were raised. And one of them is a possible resumption of flights between Nigeria and the UAE after flights between both countries were suspended in March the 17th over disagreements relating to COVID-19 testing. But another take-home is that the federal government plans to begin a mass vaccination scheme by this Friday. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, asks Nigerians and people in general not to forget the over 5 million global COVID-19 deaths.
Let's not forget, COVID-19 has taken the lives of over 5 million people globally. 5 million is not a small number. In 1.5 years, 5 million people have died. This is for where they keep the statistics. Don't talk about countries where we don't have very good record-keeping sessions. There are so many people that have died of COVID-19 in Nigeria that we have not recorded because they die, and the people in the villages and in the towns will say that probably people from his village are the ones that pursued him to the city and killed him. We have all sorts of explanations to give, but I believe strongly that working together with the media, we should be able to accelerate this mass vaccination exercise so that we can reduce to a large extent the adverse effect of this COVID.
So a number of issues raised there. Let's discuss this further with Professor Titus Ibekwe, a public health physician who joins us live from our Abuja studio. It's great to have you on the program, Prof. Let me begin from where the SGF stopped. Mass vaccination campaign to begin in a couple of days. So Nigeria is said to be expecting over 60 million vaccines. So essentially, the fears about whether or not we'll have enough should not be a factor in this one. But looking at this holistically, how do you see this playing out, the mass vaccination scheme?
Thank you very much, Kayode. It is really very desirable to talk of mass vaccination scheme, and that's what the entire globe is aiming at. But I can say that there are three key factors here, which is very important. One is provision of the vaccine. The second one is intake. And the third one is hesitancy. And you must do everything possible to promote number one and number two here, and as much as possible to de-emphasize number three before you'll be able to achieve the mass vaccination. What do I mean here? Yes, having the will to make the vaccine available, which I think we are working towards. Then, secondly, ensuring that people will come out to have these vaccines and will be convinced, because you don't force anybody to take this. Mainly is out of conviction. And when you are able to do this, that means that you would have given enough information across board in languages that people understand, and through different strata that will permeate even the most hardest reach area to reach in the country. The hard reach areas to reach in the country should be able to have same information across. When you do this, then hesitancy, that is saying no to the vaccine when it is provided, will as much as possible be reduced. If we don't do this, we'll not be able to get it right. We end up looking at these vaccines on our shelf, gotten expired in our hands, which will be very disastrous indeed.
Quite a number of issues.
The orientation agency and indeed everybody concerned still have a lot of role to play with regards to information sharing regarding this vaccine.
So it's good you've broken this down into, it's good you broke this down into three different, what I call them, stages. But then in terms of, do I say uptake or hesitancy now, in terms of messaging, earlier on the WHO had said vaccines alone cannot stop this pandemic. In fact, the SGF at that briefing yesterday said that the non-pharmaceutical measures are the best safeguards. So some people might internalize and then wonder why the federal government and some states are making vaccination sort of, compulsory for workers if they can use face masks, if they can wash their hands or sanitize their hands, avoid large gatherings as, a safe option to vaccination. So don't you think in terms of messaging, people think they probably have a choice. If I don't get vaccinated, I can choose the NPIs and be fine.
Kayode, you see, information is power. I'm sure that when people are well informed, they'll want to use all the available options within themselves, available to them to protect themselves. Non-pharmaceutical measures is excellent. There's no doubt about it. And even when you get vaccinated, that should not be relegated for any reason. You should not throw caution to wind. So we are all expected to still, abide by the non-pharmaceutical measures. But you are having double protection when you move a step further to get yourself fully vaccinated. That is to say, is a double barrel protection. And if you put the two on scale, I'll tell you that somebody who is applying the non-pharmaceutical measures and also got himself vaccinated is better protected. There's no doubt about it. This is the reality. And that is how the messaging should go. People should be encouraged. I don't think that you force anybody to do this, but once people are well informed, they will voluntarily step up to have their vaccination and still maintain the non-pharmaceutical measures.
Well, Prof, we need to go on a break now, but there's still some issues we need to explore further. I mean, you recall the SGF referencing people may be dying without knowing that it's as a result of COVID-19. And I just wonder what your thoughts will be on that one. But we'll go to break, and when we return, we'll discuss this and so much more. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We still have with us Professor Titus Sibekwe, who's a public health physician, interestingly also an ENT specialist. Well, Prof, thank you for staying with us. So regarding risk communication, which is a major tool in sensitizing people, it has proven difficult, especially when people look at the death rate in Nigeria and say, it is low. In fact, the recent figures show that we didn't have any fatality in the past 24 hours. And some would tell you, I don't even know anyone who has died from the virus. So do you think that maybe people might be dying from this virus silently?
You have said it all, Kayode, and the SGF equally made that very clear. It is reality. Reason is not far from fetched. You know, COVID-19 is a very fastidious disease. I describe it as that because it can present in different ways depending on the immune status of the infected person. You know, let's not forget that initially the conventional or the traditional COVID-19 we know will start with loss of smell and taste, which is a typical ENT field, and we have worked on this extensively, you know, which would be like a red flag. But we know that following transmutation of this virus, the Delta variant does not present with loss of smell and taste, for instance. You know, it presents with other features, you know, other pronouncements that may make it mimic some other common tropical illnesses that are available here in Nigeria. Simple malaria, pneumonia, you know, it will mimic these diseases. And people may end up treating the wrong thing for the wrong reason, and until you search before you'll be able to find. So that is why that message is very apt. COVID-19, obviously, will be coming and just stealing people away and being branded to be other diseases. That's why we should not throw caution to wind, and we should remain protected, because, yeah, the pandemic is easy enough, but has not completely been erased off the surface of the earth. So Nigeria is not an exception, and we know that we're working based on statistics. And as rightly said, statistics is only when you make effort to search for it. It's a scientific thing that you'll be able to get it. Otherwise, you see people dying every day without knowing the real cause of their death. And it is very important. So that's why the pharmaceutical measures is still key, and of course getting ourselves vaccinated. We should, as much as possible, de-emphasize all the myths that are flying around. It has been looked into critically and found to all be falsehood, things being peddled against the treatment for this deadly illness. You don't wait till you become a victim before you come to believe that it is real. Some of us talking on national television and stations like yours were victim of this, and it took a lot of, I would say, God's grace for us to be survivors today. It's something that one will not wish one's enemy. So COVID-19 is real for those who are still in doubt, and please don't wait to get infected before you agree that it is real, because a lot of people have gone through the processes and they couldn't survive it. You know, so I think there's a lot of truth in that statement that is still very much with us, and a lot of death could be attributed to this without knowing it, because we have not really thoroughly searched for it and taken inventories. You can imagine in our hinterlands and hard to reach areas, we keep on seeing obituaries every now and then, died of brief illness. Some will say difficulty with breathing and all those, and presently the person, this or that happened. This may be COVID until you test such people before you'll be able to, you know, conclusively say that it was due to COVID-19.
And I think it will be all the more difficult to, like you said, conclusively say that if not much research has been done. In fact, you wonder how wide our seroprevalence is at this point, where you expect I will have done an extensive research. But on a final note, Prof, I wonder if there is now good enough knowledge about COVID-19 within the medical field, at least from where you sit. You know, we knew that the virus was novel when it first came on, but close to 2 years now, would you still describe COVID-19 as a novel virus?
Well, in that sense, something that is 2 years old, yes, it's still novel, but I would say that a lot of information is out there in the public space regarding this disease. And it's not as if it is something completely 100% new. It still have a family that it belongs to. Only that, as we know, viruses are organisms that, you know, transmutate very fast. And you have to also keep pace with its transmutation, studying its features, its characters, and modifying even your measures and treatments. You know, once this is holistically done across the globe, and that's why it is a disease that cannot be treated in isolation. It's a disease of equal opportunity. So everybody must be carried along, you know, to be able to stamp it out completely, you know, out of not just Nigeria, but out of the entire globe.
Well, Prof, that's a great place to leave it. We'd like to thank you so much, Professor Titus Ibikwe, who's a public health physician and an ENT specialist at ear, nose, and throats, otorhinolaryngologist. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program this evening.
Thank you for having me, Kayode.
The pleasure is ours. Moving on, Taraba State Governor Darius Ishaku has given his word to the poor and vulnerable residents affected by COVID-19 that his administration will continuously strive to ensure that they are back on their feet through various interventions to cushion the effect of the pandemic. At the unveiling of new programs for the Taraba State COVID-19 Action, Recovery and Economic Stimulus as an offshoot of the N-Cares initiative, the state government promises to stick to the World Bank's criteria for identifying the vulnerable residents.
The advent of the pandemic in Nigeria has adversely affected every facet of human endeavor, claiming the lives and livelihoods of many. To cushion the effects of the pandemic on citizens, the World Bank, in collaboration with the federal government and 36 Nigerian governors, initiated a program codenamed N-Cares to restore livelihoods of the poor and vulnerable affected by the outbreak. At this one-day sensitization training for stakeholders in the state, civil society organizations are asking relevant government authorities to go beyond sensitization and look towards the sustainability of the program.
We're again trying to look at sensitizing the people to come up with more viable projects, justifiable projects that is not influenced by anybody from outside, but is coming from the very community. That's the way we are going to go about it. And it is expected, as usual, to be writing a quarterly report on what we observe that is not within the criteria that they are supposed to use. But we are quite aware that certain projects are politically motivated. That shouldn't be the case. Any project within this context that is politically motivated will lack the sustainability.
The lead agency, Community Social Development Program, CSDP, seems determined to stimulate the economy of Taraba State and indeed Nigeria to prevent business from collapsing, creating jobs in various sectors of the economy and offer special grants to rebuild the economy.
To retain and create jobs in key areas such as agricultural facilities, maintain housing and direct interventions such as CSDP. By so doing, we'll be able to maintain some of the facilities we have, sustain them, put them to use, and for others to use them.
Governor Darius Ishaku, represented by the Commissioner for Finance, says his administration will not rest until the poor and vulnerable affected by COVID-19 pandemic are back on their feet again.
The activity we are undertaking today is part of the measure we are taking as a state to ensure that services, basic services, school buildings, hospital services, micro projects like roads are brought to the places where our people live in their various remote areas.
NCARES, an embodiment of different World Bank assisted programs in the country, aims to cushion the economic effects of COVID-19 within the next 2 years.
And outside the country, many restaurants, cafes and bars are closed across Greece as workers in the service industry embark on a strike. The 24-hour strike is for a number of reasons, including new coronavirus measures and government support for the restaurant industry, which has struggled during the pandemic. Meanwhile, the number of COVID-19 cases in Europe continue to be on the rise, and more measures are being taken to curb it. There's more in the Global Update.
The surge in cases is lost on the population in Greece as restaurants closed their doors in Athens as part of a 24-hour strike to demand compensation for losses due to coronavirus measures. Last week, authorities announced new measures which require the unvaccinated to provide negative tests to enter confined outdoor spaces of cafes and restaurants, while only vaccinated people are allowed inside. The International Public Health Group Medicines Patent Pool has welcomed Pfizer's decision to allow generic manufacturers to supply its experimental antiviral COVID-19 pill to 95 low and middle income countries. The voluntary licensing agreement between Pfizer and the MPP will allow the United Nations-backed group to grant sub-licenses to qualified generic drug makers to make their own versions of PF07321332. Pfizer will sell the pills it manufactures under the brand name Paxlovid. Cuba has reopened schools and its borders to international tourism and eased entry requirements after almost 2 years of coronavirus pandemic that has wreaked havoc on the Caribbean islands' economy. Travelers over 12 will only have to carry proof of vaccination or a recent PCR to enter the country, replacing perhaps the strictest protocols in the Caribbean. And finally, people in France, like the rest of Europe, are hoping that getting vaccinated will help avoid another lockdown. New COVID-19 cases have surpassed a daily average of 10,000. New cases have seen double-digit percentage increases week on week since around mid-October.
Well, visit our website, channelstv.com, for more updates and a better understanding of the pandemic, plus other stories, all at your fingertips. That's the COVID-19 update. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Remember to take responsibility.